So, Mikey, I've got a wild tale for you that'll break a leg and fit perfectly with our theme today. You know my buddy, Wiley Pymore?
I
The
wish I didn't.
the Las Vegas-based performance artist? He's tackling a new project, a musical about local legend Temple Houston titled Temple, a horse opera in G-flat major and 4 octaves. Now, if you don't know much about Temple, just Google it. I ain't your personal encyclopedia. But long story short, he's the son of famous Sam Houston and was one hell of a lawyer who could speak multiple languages and was known for giving riveting lectures on everything from astronomy to deep questions of faith. But he also had some flaws, namely being a bad drunk, a womanizer, and a little too quick to settle a dispute with his peacemaker. So anyway.
Or his Colt 45.
Yeah, well.
For those of you who don't know.
What a peacemaker is, yeah.
Carry on. Yeah. Colt 45 and 2 zigzags, baby. That's all we need.
So anyway, back to Wiley's musical. Turns out he knows nothing about writing for the stage in general or musicals specifically. But no problem. He's already working on the script and bringing in some hotshot composer who just so happens to be an America's Got Talent first-round reject. That's a classic Wiley move, by the way. Dude's name is Montague, but he goes by the nick Monty. And get this, Wiley wants the guy to crash at my place while they work on the production. Yeah, right, like I'm falling for that trick. The wife will be out of town during all of this madness, but there's no way they'll finish the whole musical before she gets back. Nice try, Wiley. Well, hello there, my dear fellow untrained thespians. It is I, the one and only Mr. Robin, your trusty stage manager, broadcasting digitally from the underground orchestra pit in Studio B, located at the compound just outside the Fargo, Oklahoma Metroplex. Get ready for another thrilling ride on our podcast. Let's be real, you know you can't resist. And joining me, as always, is my partner in production, known for her talent in snatching rawhide treats from the jaws of angry chihuahuas, none other than Mikkel Murray Robinson, also known as Mikey on the Mic. Okay, enough of that. Give a warm welcome to our utterly perplexed listeners, Mikey.
Greetings, utterly perplexed listeners.
That's kind of a mouthful.
That was. Wait, were you trying to trick me? I need my grandfather's direction on how to present that in a conversational way.
And let's not forget our trio of troublemakers at the controls for today's chaotic adventure, the infamous Repo Babe Magdalene, the tow truck driver. We also have Cousin Fred's ex-flame and hairdresser turned hydrologist Gigi, and of course Cousin Fred himself. Their presence here has added a whole new level of insanity that is truly an award-winning performance to behold. They're here with us today to brainstorm ways to kill me off in the script they work on constantly. Now that's what I call dedication to their craft.
That's right. They are dedicated. Welcome to Mr. Robin's Hood podcast. I know you've been listening. So now you're going to be on it.
Okay.
My grandpa Fred here on the phone, or Ron Frederickson, as some of you will know him. So say hello to everyone, Grandpa.
Hello, everyone.
Well, in case you didn't pick that up, our guest today is none other than Dr. Ronald Frederickson of Salt Lake City, Utah. Ron is another of life's overachievers who has distinguished himself in theatrical arts. He has a PhD in performance studies from the University of Utah and has been involved in acting, directing, and teaching acting for over 50 years. He was a professor of theater at Emporia State University in Emporia, Kansas for 27 years. And as I understand it, he has a theater there named after him.
Yes.
And is currently adjunct.
No, he quit doing that.
Oh, okay.
Grandpa, you'll have to tell us when you quit as an adjunct professor at.
Well, actually, I was an adjunct professor starting in 2001, and then I retired in 1998. But a play that I had written, or not written, a play that I had directed was entered into the American College Theater Festival, and it went to Ames, Iowa for the regionals. And so even though I technically was retired from Emporia State University at the end of 1998, in January of 1999, we went to Ames, Iowa, and performed this play, Picasso at the Le Pan Gilles, which is written by Steve Martin.
Oh.
And there happened to be 2 universities doing that play in this regional competition, so that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting.
And speaking of your career as a director, Ron has directed over 70 plays and musicals for university, regional, and community theater, including the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. In addition, Ron has had roles in over 50 stage plays and musicals. He was cast as Ishmael. How do you say that?
Ishmael, no.
Oh, okay. A major supporting role in Gary Rogers' The Book of Mormon movie, Volume 1, The Journey, and that dates back to 2003. His wife, Roberta Shore, who, by the way, has a rather distinguished credentials in both TV and movies, played his wife in the film.
Actually, as it turned out, she was cast to play my wife, but as it turned out, she had another commitment and ended up not playing my wife in that particular film.
Okay.
But,
I didn't even know that.
Anyway, just to keep things on the up and up.
Yeah. Let's be transparent. You can't believe everything you see on the internet, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm very hopeful that you won't come to regret making an appearance on this train wreck of a podcast, as so many of our guests have in the past. But I'm going to be really upfront with you. We're not really interested in your life achievements. What we really want to know are any embarrassing anecdotal stories you might have about your granddaughter, Mikey, here, that I can use against her in the future.
He probably does. Don't tell him.
As far as I can tell, I don't have any embarrassing stories about Mikey.
As far as he can tell,
I have about Mikey are just in praise of her accomplishments.
Right. Sure. Of course.
Oh, thanks so much. So to get it all kicked off, I did it backwards. I introduced you before the introduction that Robin had, so now everybody knows all of that. I would love to start with the first question that I think we should start with to kind of get the ball rolling, and something I don't even know that you and I have ever talked about, but I want to kind of know where it all began. What made you choose a creative career? Like what in your childhood, or maybe it wasn't then? I was just curious, so.
Oh, well, it was interesting. The first play that I ever did that was actually a university play was 10 Little Indians, and at the time I was 25 years old, but I had majored in performance studies, which at the time was known as oral interpretation of literature, and I did I did a lot of reading of poetry and prose, and then it happened that I was made two offers in about 1972. One was from Ithaca College in Ithaca, New York,
Uh-huh.
and also Emporia State University. I had gone to a conference in San Francisco and met Carl Bruder, who was the chair of the speech and theater department at Emporia University.
Mhm.
And I accepted that job and began teaching oral interpretation classes and ultimately acting classes and directing classes at Emporia State University, which at the time was the Kansas State Teachers
Right.
College.
Oh. Uh-huh.
And so that's what happened there at the University of Utah. Before that, I did a number of individual performances doing poetry and prose and some dramatic literature as well. But I kind of backed into the door of theater because technically speaking, I didn't major in theater as an undergraduate, but I majored in performance studies at the time known as oral interpretation.
Mhm.
And when I retired from Emporia State University, the University of Utah picked me up as adjunct professor in 2001. And I taught my last classes there in 2015.
Okay, I
The
was
last
I was wondering about that.
I directed was 5th of July as student production at the University of Utah.
That's not where your love of that stops, because you still go to plays and whatnot. We've been to several because you, as I understand it, while at the University of, or the Emporia State, you started the homecoming play tradition. Is that correct? Am I right there?
Well, yeah, the very first Carl Bruder and Howard Haugendorf, who was the orchestra director at Emporia State University, decided to do a homecoming musical in 73. And the very first one they did was Camelot. And Carl Bruder and Jim Filey asked me if I would direct it. And I did direct the very first homecoming musical at Emporia State it was put on in 1973. And recently they celebrated the 50th homecoming musical
Right.
at Emporia State and invited me to be there for that. So that was a really marvelous experience.
Sure, and it's a great tribute to you.
During the period of time that my grandson, who becomes brother, was getting married in that period of time. So I killed two birds with one stone, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, though, sometimes we'll meet you up there because they actually invite him back, every year. And sometimes you come more than you don't, I feel like. And we've met him up there, but we weren't able to do that. And then my dad told me they honored you at that one, at the 50th.
Yeah, they did. They took me and the choreographer for that celebration up on the stage and presented each of us with a nice little plaque. So that was a very special happening, and that happened a week before Keston's marriage. So
Yep.
I hung around and did both things.
Yeah. He was in Kansas again for a whole week. And I don't know if we went over this a little bit, but when you retired in 98, you came back into that play, but you actually moved back to Salt Lake City, which is where you were originally from before you got the job in Emporia in 1973. So
that's right. That's right. I was born and raised in Salt Lake, and I suppose the first performances I gave was in the living room, my fraternity house, because I used to use the material of Shelley Berman and Andy Griffith and Wally Cox, stand-up comedians at the time. It was before Andy Griffith's television program, as a matter of fact. And so my performances were happening in the living room of the fraternity house, and that was before I did my very first play. So
I see.
that was kind of fun.
yeah.
I used to, try to sound like Andy Griffith. It was back last October, I believe it was. We were home and he describes a football game. and so I did that. I also did some Shelley Berman stuff. He was a stand-up comedian, and Wally Cox as well. Wally Cox had a television program as well at one point.
So I guess trying the material out on the fraternity brothers, you kind of, it was probably as much a learning experience for you as anything, right?
Yeah, it really was.
Uh-huh.
I found out that when I used their material, as a matter of fact, I started doing Shelley Berman's material from his LP, Inside Shelley Berman. And a lot of people heard me do it before they heard him do it. I remember more than one person coming up to me on the University of Utah campus and saying, "Hey, we're listening to the radio, and there's some guy on the radio using your material."
That's great.
That is great. Oh, that's funny.
I'm kind of interested to get your perspective on a couple of things. I've written a lot of stuff over the years, all kinds of stuff and various genres. And for better or worse, I've noticed a particular shift over the past 30 years or so. And, what was funny back then, you couldn't possibly get away with now. And I'm interested in knowing if you have seen similar shifts in, say, dramatic theater or just live theater. And if so, was it difficult for you as an instructor, director, producer to make those adjustments?
Well, not particularly. By the time I retired, I had done a lot of plays, but I don't know that I did the homecoming musical every year, and then I usually did a piece of summer theater every year. Emporia State they used to do 6 plays during the summer, and then they did the homecoming musical in the fall. And every 3 years, I directed the homecoming musical. So the first one I directed was Camelot, and the next one I directed was Maine, and I did South Pacific, and we usually do just the really big ones, And these days, I think the material that they cover in both musicals and plays there has been a shift in the kind of material, because I think they're responding to things that are happening
Sure.
currently. The most recent play I saw was a play called A Prayer for the French Republic. That's currently going on at Pioneer Memorial Theater at the University of Utah campus. So, but I think that theater has kind of kept up with the happenings in the world at large. And the earlier stuff that we remember is not done this much. Sometimes they do revivals of,
Right.
but
Of course.
haven't done some of those revivals of the really blockbusters, like Oklahoma. I think for a while.
Okay. And you obviously have a great deal of experience in teaching and acting. I'm interested in knowing maybe a little bit about the processes of working with actors that you used to help them develop their characters.
And then I want to plug in my 2 cents after, because I've seen him in action. So,
Okay. Great.
Well, I suppose my main emphasis was always how much sense you could make out of reading a particular line. And I was really known for encouraging actors not to punch their personal pronouns or possessives. I and you and your. Professional actors do a lot of that, even to this day. I remember when we did Picasso at the Le Panagile, and we saw another university do it during the same regional competition in Ames, Iowa. A couple of my students came up to me afterwards, having been in one of the productions and having seen the other production, came to me and said, "Oh, Ron, thank you so much for helping us not to punch our personal pronouns and possessives." They heard in the other production of the same play. They heard a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
And so my emphasis tended to be, avoiding the words, the bigness of big and the so-ness of snow, so, and the you-ness of you,
right.
People even to this day say, "Oh, that it's so something or other,"
Yeah, sure.
Instead, that is so something or other, Anyway, we're probably, but I really spent a lot of time just helping students to read the lines to make sense conversationally, rather than spend a lot of time acting,
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, because it's almost like it's really happening in that sense, and it's a natural conversation. One thing I remember, because I don't know, I obviously was not around when you did Camelot the first time, but you directed it again, and I came and I stayed with you, I think, and I went to rehearsal, and I remember the specific, what was his name, Eric?
Eric.
Yes, I remember Eric.
Arthur.
Yeah.
The 26th homecoming musical.
Yeah,
that was Camelot.
Yeah. See, so, and I remember just sitting up there. I don't remember how old I was. I'm not good at doing that kind of math. But I remember you stopped him several times because of the way that he was saying that line. And you're like, no. It should be like this. And you were giving him an example. You know what I mean? And that always struck me because I'm like, man, as a creative myself, I'm a person that I want to say somewhat visual and the draw me a picture or show me how to do it or tell me how to do it. If you try to explain it to me without the example, sometimes I'm just like, okay, I don't know what you want from me or whatever. And I just remember thinking like, how great that was that you could do that for our students, because I feel like a lot of creative people are in that same boat. And, after a few tries, he got it the way that you thought. But just watching the way that I feel like every director has a way they perceive the production as it should be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just seeing that process, that was a really cool thing. I remember specifically about your directing.
I'm wondering, Mikhail, did you happen to see the production of The Boys Next Door, where Dallin, your brother, was sitting in the audience, the 5-year-old?
I think I was the sleeping 3-year-old. If I remember, but you should tell that story because it's great. My older brother's 2 years almost exactly older than me, and he got the like all of them can sing. I'm not so good at that part, but so my older brother, because already kind of showing those things as a 5-year-old, and so Grandpa, tell them the story because you do it so well.
Okay. Well, The Boys Next Door is a story about a group home where fellows, a number of men, and at least 1 or 2 women are somewhat retarded, which is a word we used to use. I don't know what that's acceptable.
I think it's developmentally challenged.
I was playing the role of Lucian, who was quite seriously retarded, and he was there with a leader of the group, a professional who worked with these men, and he and I were on the stage, and I was singing a song, and what I sang was A B C D E F, and then I couldn't remember the next letter, and I squinted my eyes, and Dallin, Mikhail's older brother, 5 years old, sitting over about 5 or 6, right in the middle, and right on key, came out and sang G. And of course, Lynn Black, who was the professional leader and helper of this group home, had this hold for the raucous laughter that went on for quite some time and stay in character rather than responding to what was one of the most funny events in the whole play. But that was one of the most memorable things that I remember. And of course, I originally was at the wedding with Alan, and we talked a little bit about that. Remember that
reminiscing.
He was concerned that people were laughing at him rather than. Of course, they were laughing at him, but I think he was a little disturbed by the reaction.
He didn't quite understand how funny that was. So he wasn't sure why, is, one of those things. But that's a great story. I always love that story. Over the years, I mean, I almost feel like I've seen 70 plays. Probably not all the same ones that you have, but I probably have been to about half of those. Because at one point, we were up there all the time. And I think one of the fun parts as a kid when we'd go to your plays, Grandpa, is when you'd show us the after the orchestra pit, and we'd meet some of the musicians, and you show us how the set was built, and we kind of got that behind the scenes look at everything.
That's a great experience.
It really was. I mean, at one point I was a theater minor, but it just didn't work out with my schedule and the way that it was designed at Northwestern. But I did do a mural in their little hangout place there that's always there. So I made my mark and painted a bunch of sets and acted in one play. And I can do that as long as you don't add singing. I'm, what do they say, triple threat, Grandpa? I'm not a triple threat, a double or whatever. But, give me one that,
She
I don't have to
threatens
sing
me
it
all the time, actually. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm good at. But
Well, I over the years, I know that there have been times when I've come back for the homecoming musical, and quite frequently, that my son Todd's kids come up with their spice,
That's right.
I guess, which is plural for spouse.
Oh.
And
He's
go,
talking about me.
Very good.
by the way.
and go to the whatever homecoming musical is there. And that's just, we've done that several times over the years. At this time, it coincided with plans for Keston's wedding.
Right.
So there weren't as many family members there, but it was great getting together and for what happened with your little brother, and that was great fun.
Yes, it was. His wedding was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Ron, if I could ask, I was really impressed to see among your credits that you had actually done work at the Kennedy Center in Washington. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Several of the plays that I directed were entered in the American College Theater Festival.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I got
And the one that was entered in the American College Theater Festival in 1993 was Voice of the Prairie. Voice of the Prairie is actually a reference to early radio, where people listened to the radio at a time, when it first came out. And there's a great play by John All called The Voice of the Prairie. And Voice of the Prairie was chosen to go to the regional competition. And then, of course, there, as I recall, there are 8 regions in the American College Theater Festival. And there are about 8 plays that get chosen to from the regional festival to actually perform the play at the Kennedy Center.
I see.
And so the play that I directed for 1993 went to the regional, won the regional, and as a result, we were one of the plays that went to the Kennedy Center and performed there, the American College Theater Festival. There didn't used to be what you'd call a winner, a national winner. It's just that they were featured at the smaller theater in the Kennedy Center. And so we were really fortunate at Emporia State to have the play Voice of the Prairie to go all the way to the Kennedy Center as a part of the American College Theater Festival competition. And that was the 25th year of the American College Theater Festival. The College Theater Festival has gone on many times since that time, and other plays have been performed in the Kennedy Center. So at least 8 plays are performed every year at the Kennedy Center. I assume it may be still going on.
Yeah. Okay. And how long were you? I mean, I assume there were rehearsals and then the actual performances. How long were you? I hate to use the term, but I lived in Washington for a number of years. How long were you stuck in D.C.?
Oh, the presentations in DC. Uh, uh, there's only one performance of
Uh-huh. Oh,
each
okay.
play
Oh,
that
so
has made it to the Kennedy Center, and so I remember that we were there in, I think, late April or early May, and we saw each of the plays, and of course our play was presented, but each play, as I recall, was only performed once at
Mhm.
that at the Kennedy Center. So we were there for about a week,
Ah, okay.
and it was very special.
Sure, of course.
So grandmother, my late wife, was able to be there, so that
Oh,
was good.
yeah, I was gonna say because it was, if I'm not mistaken, August of '93 that she passed, correct?
Right.
So that
And it
would have
was
been like
just a few
right
months after
before. Yeah. Well, that is special. I actually didn't know that. I mean, I knew you performed at the Kennedy Center, but I didn't realize what, year it was and that Grandma Fred could be there. That's great. I have some memories of her, but when she passed, I was still pretty young. But she was also into literature. She had a master's in library sciences and
Yeah, she was a specialist in children's literature. She had a room in the library at Butcher Children's School in Emporia State, and she had her whole room. There were various colored pillows in there, and the students would come into the library, and Mrs. Fred, as she was known,
Mhm.
would read special, and then she was also on the committee for the Newbery Award and the Caldecott Award for our particular region. She was really a specialist in children's literature and was well known for reading to the kids who would come into the library. And her room was filled with pillows for them to lounge on while she read.
Yeah. I have some memories of her reading to us, also feeding us cereal but not letting us put sugar on it. I never forgot that. I'm like, but these don't taste good without the sugar. Like, she was a stickler for also healthy eating, turns out. So, but yeah, she also was from Salt Lake. They met there. So, and Grandpa, you always refer to, and I think this is fun, and maybe other people can relate, but your mountain home and your prairie home.
Yeah, yeah. And when we first moved from Salt Lake Valley, which is surrounded by mountains, she she was not very happy with the move to begin with, but she came to really cherish her, as she would put it, her mountain home and her prairie home, and so those were good years, and she used to teach some courses in children's literature,
Oh,
and got her master's in library science from Emporia State University while she was there
uh-huh.
uh, as librarian for the Butcher Children's School.
Yeah. So, did you and Grandma Fred perform in things together? I know that you did,
Yeah,
but maybe.
we did a lot of singing
Yeah.
together. Really, we we did. We sang duets a lot for church and to some extent civic groups. And I remember one of the songs we sang was, I remember it well. We meditate. The man sings, we met at 9, and she corrects him. We met at 8. Some time. No, you were late. Ah, yes, I remember it well. Well, we did a lot of duets that way, and
I
that
see.
was very fun.
That's great.
Yeah, I think I have some memories of that too, of you guys singing, because not only did you do duets with her, but you and my dad and my uncle Paul, you guys all sang together some, if I recall.
Yeah, that's true. As a family, you know, we formed a quartet
Right.
when our soloist boys Todd and Paul were just like between 12 and 15, and we would go around caroling to our friends and neighbors' homes in Emporia, Kansas, and of course we had to adjust. Gene always sang soprano, and I always sang bass, but Paul and Todd would fill in with alto and ultimately baritone when Todd got old enough, and that was really fun singing carols at Christmas time for our friends and neighbors. We had a great time doing that.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Well, I know you somewhat caroled at Brett and I's wedding. I'll say that. But instead of, it being just your two sons, it was also your two grandsons. So my grandpa and his creativity, because my last name is now Robinson, so I'm Miss Robinson, right? And
Right.
and anyhow, so my grandpa changed the words just a little bit to kind of meet my specific situation, so to speak. So like he talked about me being a DJ and whatever, and like the outside the chorus, and here's to you, Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel.
That was great.
And
now here's to you, Mrs. Robinson.
yep. And yes,
It was initially a Simon and Garfunkel number that we put together for Michaela Brett's wedding. That was great fun, and of course, I think we had a quintet of Todd and Paul and Feston and Dallin
Yep.
and me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And everybody was very much enjoyed the little performance. I still remember when your brother and grandpa and dad and uncle all sang that. So it really stuck in people's minds. It was really a great thing. So I had to bring that up because
that was a great experience. It was fun that we could all be there.
Yeah, definitely. Which was like 10 years ago, huh? It's wild to think about.
Yeah, right. 2014, I remember.
Yeah.
That was the year you and Brett got together, right?
Well, we knew each other previous, but yeah, 2014 is when we sealed the deal, as some would say. But anyhow, Robin, did you have another question?
I
that
do.
You
and Ron, I'd just like to throw this out. And just to give you a little background, in Woodward, there's an old theater that was built in, I think, 1929.
That's exactly right.
And when they originally built this, the idea was to build it as a movie theater. But the guy that was financially backing the building of this insisted that they put an orchestra pit down below and a stage with an orchestra pit, because he really thought that the movies were just a fad and would be gone in a few years. And so the place operated as a movie theater for a number of years, up until I think the early 90s maybe. And after that, they converted it and decided they were going to turn it into a live arts sort of performance venue. And they've had there was one director in particular who would bring, plays in there annually. And I just wanted to touch base with you and get your thoughts on, for someone who may be interested in trying their hand in directing on the community theater level, what qualities should that person have to ensure a successful production?
Well, I think that a play director really has to know the script
Mhm.
very well, and has have a real sense of what an actor can be, believable. And sometimes when actors need to make sure that they are heard and understood. These days when musicals are done, we have body mics.
Right.
The musicals that I first directed at Emporia State had the microphones across the front of the stage, but there were no body mics. And I remember one of the things I would do is take my students over to Albert Taylor Hall, which was a very large theater on Emporia State's campus. I would sit up high in the balcony, and the students who were taking classes from me, I would encourage them to make sure that they projected so that I could hear them where I was sitting. And so one of the things is that, in film, quite frequently the actors aren't prepared to be heard the way they are in live theater. So I think one of the things that the director has to do is make sure that the actors can be understood,
Mhm.
and that I sometimes use the phrase, an actor has to be able to hit row R with his voice, her voice,
Yeah.
in order to be understood. So I think that anyone who is directing a play or even acting in a play
Mhm.
needs to work on the whole notion of feeling totally conversational
Okay.
while projecting, and that's very different from film
Right.
when you have the mic very close to you. You may have a body mic and don't have to worry about that so much.
Mhm.
Right. Or they have those really expensive mics on the cameras, are like huge, and they're like right in your face with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of those. Which I'm sure, I feel like in live theater too, you have to have the confidence to be able to project your voice, and knowing the script. Just like you said, the director should know it, but the performer is also knowing it, because I feel like that plays into it. If you're not comfortable in the script and your parts, you may not be able to stay focused on projecting for people to hear you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You have to worry about two things. You have to know the script well enough that you give your fellow actors the right cue for
Right.
that.
Sure.
And
That's
of
true.
course, sometimes you have to be very creative in doing a little onstage playwriting when something goes wrong.
Right.
So
That's very true.
that's always a challenge.
Sure.
But as a director, I used to really require students would learn their lines and know them really well. As a matter of fact, we would have speed runs for just so if you could do it really fast in a sit down performance where everyone would just say the lines.
Mhm.
It said them really fast, and you would do a speed through, uh, just to make sure that the lines were thoroughly memorized and
Right.
understood some of the cues. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, so you just sit in like a big circle and then everybody just starts spitting off their line from beginning to end?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That seems like a legit way to do it, honestly,
Oh, yeah.
because that is true.
When you have a speed run, you can do it in a circle. When you have a speed run, sometimes you're doing the blocking as well, and so you're moving around the stage
Right.
Okay.
more quickly than normal.
Yeah.
But at least that was some of the way that I handled.
So,
I handled rehearsals.
yeah, so I'm going to kind of backtrack just a tad bit because that reminded me of something else. When you were talking about your offers from Emporia State University and the University in Ithaca, New York, or Ithaca, did you seek those out and apply, and then they contact you, or how did that happen exactly?
Those two particular offers came as a result of my going to a convention
Okay.
in San Francisco, and that's where I met Carl Bruder at Emporia State or Kansas State Teachers College, and Wayne Chapman, who was the young faculty member whose place I would take if I got the job. And I remember when I went to Ithaca College and had that interview I was going there as a teacher of oral interpretation, which is now known as performance studies. And I remember when I went there for an interview, one of the questions I asked was, because I knew that I was going to be directing a couple of plays if I went to Emporia. One of the questions I asked was, in this department of speech and theater at Ithaca, would I have an opportunity to direct plays? And they hadn't anticipated that question, and I was thinking of me.
Good for you.
As a teacher of spoken poetry and prose and sometimes dramatic text. And so that was, when they looked at me a little funny about my asking about directing, that made up my decision to go to Emporia rather than Ithaca.
Yeah, I understand that. I kind of had a similar experience, and when I first moved to Woodward, I got 2 job offers, one from the radio station and one from the newspaper. I had interviewed with both, and I had asked the newspaper, well, if I'm selling some advertising, will I be able to create it? And they're like, oh, we have a graphic design person, so you're just selling. And when I went to the radio station and I said, well, will I be able to, create some of the ads and have like basically a creative outlet to what I'm doing? And they're like, oh, yeah,
Sure.
This is a small station. If you sell it, then you can voice it and you can, produce it. And not always. Sometimes it's bigger and they give you the script and sometimes you voice it, or they give you the whole ad and then you schedule it, whatever. But just knowing that I would have that kind of helped me in my choice as well. I'm like, well, then I'm going to the radio. And then I ended up being on air as well.
Right.
And so that all worked out. And now I'm here on this train wreck of a podcast making no money. Not even the little bit I was making an hour. No, I'm just kidding. So I totally understand that. So I was just kind of curious what was kind of the push on that, and that makes sense. Well, I'm glad that you went to Emporia, because if you didn't, I probably wouldn't be here today talking to you. So it all worked out for the best, right?
That's probably true. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, it's all interconnected. So, over the years, you've done some other things as well outside of just your work as a professor and in the theater in a college setting, teaching people how to do that. We kind of briefly talked about your part in the Book of Mormon, but you maybe could tell us a little bit. I know at one point you did some commercials. Like, tell us a little bit about your career on that side.
and yeah, there was a period of time where, and I still have some of those commercials on.
Weren't you selling washers or something?
Yeah, that was one of the things. And I remember the first commercial I ever made was being a truck driver, and I was advertising Clover Club commercials. That was the very first commercial I ever made, and then as a result of that commercial, I got opportunities to make other rehearsals. I even did some commercials in Wichita for a furniture store at one point.
Okay.
And since I came back to Utah, I really haven't done any of the commercial work, but I did a lot of them before I left for Kansas, and I did some of them while I was in Kansas as well, and that was always an interesting. I still have the colored video of the Clover Club potato chip commercial.
I remember watching some of this.
I drove the truck, So
Oh,
Clover Club truck.
yeah.
I don't think. All we have these days is Lay's potato chips. I don't know what happened to Clover Club, but I don't think they have those anymore.
That I don't know. That kind of sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But I remember also there was another it was on TBS, The Darkling. You were in that as well. I remember watching it on the TV when I was in Protection, Kansas, and being like, my grandpa's on the TBS station. That's wild. It's a little mind-blowing for
I had small roles
right.
in 2 or 3 feature-length movies, but that movie career never went very far. I remember doing a film called The Brothers 3. Well-known actor named Patrick Wilson was one of the actors in that, and I had a small role in that, and then the one that you mentioned, The Darkling, I had a role in that. I think I did maybe 3 or 4 feature-length movies, and then I also did a number of movies for BYU Theater.
Right.
Who did a lot of church movies, and one of my earliest ones was done in about 1967, and then as a result, I did a number of movies done by BYU Film Studios, Brigham Young University. So that was an interesting period of time as well.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, I know it didn't go very far, but you went farther than a lot of people can say. You're on IMDb, and to me, that's legit, whether it's Small Rules or not, if you make it on there. But you played a judge in a sitcom, Everwood. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Is that the right name?
As a matter of fact, I still get an occasional $5.50 check or something in that neighborhood.
Oh, that's great.
For my role in Everwood.
Nice.
I remember one time I was in New York with 3 other couples, seeing a number of shows and doing the tourist thing, when I got a call from the local ad agency, asking if I could do a role as Angela Lansbury's butler in a particular production. And I remember thinking, boy, if I were to accept that, then I'd have to leave right in the middle of this New York trip with my friends, and so I couldn't do that. But
well, at least you have your priorities straight. Friends over fame always, right?
I remember doing a show called Born Yesterday, and also a show called The Apple Tree. Born Yesterday was a comedy, and The Apple Tree was a musical. And there was a well-known actress named Sue Ann Langdon who was in both of those. They happened at the University of Utah in 2 successive years.
Uh-huh.
And I remember when I accepted the job at Emporia State, or Kansas State Teachers College, and moved here, I got a call from Sue Ann Langton, who was at the Denver Center Theater doing a play called The Owl and the Pussycat. And she asked me if I could come to Denver Center Theater and play the owl. She was playing the pussycat. And that was really that could have sent me off in a whole new direction, except that by that time I had 4 classes that I was teaching at Kansas State Teachers College, and had I accepted her offer, that would have finished my my career in college theater. I couldn't have accepted her offer and left my classes at Kansas State Teachers College. That was I remember that was an interesting dilemma at the time.
Yeah, sounds like it. Because either way, your life could have gone in a different direction. So
Yeah.
Been fun going to work.
Right. Well, you've changed a lot of creatives' lives, I'm sure. I feel like any teacher that's teaching at the collegiate level. I mean, my 2 professors that I had, I mean, I still think of them and like, you know what? I came a long way with their help, but they actually write plays themselves, and they had a play they wrote that made it to what they call the Boom Theater in Oklahoma City. And I took Brett's sister. Her and I went to it and watched it. It was called Alcoholic Days, and it's about like the holidays with your family. It's funny. It's the comedy. It was a good performance. So it was fun to go support them, as people that molded my young mind, my young creative mind, which is hard to do. Turns out. But anyhow. Well, Grandpa, I feel like we've covered a lot. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add or that we should add to this great conversation about
I
your
don't
career.
believe so. I really appreciate the experience to go back over my career and to be of service to you and
What's his name?
Right. And Robin. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time.
We sure do.
Yeah. And as many people probably don't know, my grandfather just turned 90 in March. We're actually 2 days apart, but a lot of years in there. But yeah, his birthday is just 2 days after mine, or I guess mine's 2 days before his, I guess, if we'll be technical. So he's had a lengthy career and life, and I've got to experience it quite a bit. And I can probably say that it comes from my creativity, probably comes a lot from you, and also the fact that I grew up being cultured in those types of senses as well, with the coming and seeing your plays and meeting other creatives, and definitely helped me along my journey. So thank you for exposing me to the creepy creative world. No, I don't mean it like that, but
you're one of the grandchildren whose birthday I I always know when it is.
Right.
Either the 29th or the 31st of March.
Right.
So,
Can't miss that one. I got that going for me. So
that's been fun.
Well, Ron, thanks very much for taking the time to speak with us, and it's genuinely been a pleasure. And I wish you well up there in Salt Lake City.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a joy to do, and I hope that it will be interesting to those who listen.
I'm certain of that.
Oh, definitely. Well, Grandpa Fred, thanks so much for being with us today. We're gonna go ahead and let you go and get on with what you got going on, and I will talk with you soon.
Okay, that's true.
All right.
Thanks again so much.
You bet.
Yep.
Take
Bye.
care. So, Mikey, this has been a fun episode of this podcast. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. It was very fun interviewing my grandfather.
Yeah, I mean, he was a wonderful, interesting person with a wealth of information and stories. It was really enjoyable.
So now you get it, right? And I make a little bit more sense. Now you know what I've grown up with.
Yeah,
part of it.
How is it that you can't sing?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. I have the radio voice.
Okay. Well,
I've got a face for theater.
There you go.
And I can dance, but
There you go. There.
You want me to sing? I probably could if I had a lot more help.
Oh, sure.
I think I could be trained.
Sure.
It's hard. Singing's hard. Just saying.
If you have any questions for either Mikey or myself about today's episode or any other darn thing, you can email us at mr.robin@mrrobinshood.com or Mikey at mrrobinshood.com. Also, you can find us on Facebook at Mr. Robins Hood Podcast. As always, you can also reach out to Mikey or me via Podophone at 580-827-0472. Maybe you just want to get something off your chest or you're feeling some butt pain because of something we said during a podcast. Give us a call, but know that we're not likely to answer because we're quickly becoming international podcast stars and are developing a following worldwide.
Yeah, what is it this week?
Actually, it's shifted. We're in India, but we still have Guatemala.
Oh, so we're still staying
fans
strong in Guatemala.
Yeah. You can leave a voicemail. Text us if you have a question, concern, complaint, compliment, suggestion, whatever. Just don't be a dick about it. By the way, our next episode is another of the in-between episodes, and we'll continue our theme lately of exploring weird shit happening at Waffle Houses. The in-betweens are made up of Mr. Robin's old Cosmic City blog posts, all of which are pretty damn funny. You can look for the next of these in-between episodes on November 8th. As always, you can stream or download episodes of Mr. Robin's Hood podcast wherever you usually find that sort of nonsense. We're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, the Podbean app, Apple Podcasts, and Podchaser. You can also stream them directly from our Podbean website at mrrobinshoodpodcast.podbean.com and for free.
Yes, this is all free. All this content is free, and we know you're just getting smarter every day, so listen more to where people want to pay us.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
We need the cash coming in. So we'll close now by reminding everyone, as we always do, to stay hungry, stay foolish,
and most importantly, remember the play is thing. Bye,
you weirdos.